Fellas, this used to be one of my favorite hand cannons in the game. Even way back when like spare rations was meta, everybody was using the spare ration mindbender combo. And yeah, it was good. But there was one other hand cannon that could hold its own even against the godliest rolled spare rations. And that was Waking Vigil. Now, Waking Vigil is actually dropping from Shattered Throne. It has come back to us with a refresh to its rolls and as a 140 round per minute hand cannon. Remember, originally it was a 150. Now, we do have a number of rolls on this weapon. We wanted to test everything under the sun, the most lethal rolls, the most consistent rolls, as well as some quirky ones, guys, but feel free to skip to those timestamps below. But before we get into the review, today's video is being sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. Oh, turn-based strategy RPG games is my jam, man. Now, Raid is a very, very large online game. It's had over 70 million downloads, more than 1 million active daily players, over 2 billion live player battles, and over 10 billion PvE battles. All around the board, guys, Raid has broken a lot of records. Now, going on right now, Raid is actually going through its 2-year anniversary, which includes a ton of anniversary events and tournaments all the way through the middle of April. They've even got clan versus clan tournaments going on with a host of big updates coming later in the month. One being the new Doom Tower rotation with 2 new bosses. And as an added cherry on top, Raid has recently added an entirely new playable faction called Shadowkin. Now, Shadowkin are actually heavily inspired by the mythos of medieval Japan. They've got nimble ninjas, sharp samurais, ominous onis, and a whole host of mythical badasses. These guys are shrouded in mystery. No one's heard from them for hundreds of years, up until a few months ago when they revealed themselves as allied with the dwarves in the Nerisian Union. Are they good? Are they bad? Why have they returned? And why now? So check them out, guys. Shadowkin are really, really cool. As a champion, diversity amongst them are fantastic. Dual wielders like Life Taker, thick boys like Yoshi. All of these champs have a ton of character. Now, if you are interested in this game, down below is a link as well as a QR code on your screen. New players will gain access to the free epic champion Yoden, who's also simultaneously a great champion for Doom Tower, 100,000 silver, 50 gems, 3 ancient shards, which also gives you access to other champions. All these treasures will be present for you in your in-game mailbox. So big shout out to Ray for sponsoring today's video. Now back to the review. All right, starting with roll number 1. And by the way, big shout out to everyone who lended us their god rolls. This roll came with True Sight, with that bump there in range, stability, and handling. Ricochet rounds, rapid hit, which buffs our stability with every precision hit, as well as increasing that reload speed. And the final trait there is opening shot. Yes, this roll also came with a ranged masterwork. Overall, stat-wise, this is actually one of the more impressive rolls I got to play with. There are better boosting perks in regards to like range, whether it's crossfire or sure shot, but True Sight is like that middle of the aisle perk where it kind of like helps out all your other traits and doesn't really negatively hurt any of them. Now, the combination of rapid hit, opening shot is really nice, especially opening shot, right? Like that was the trait to have on Waking Vigil way back when, as it just auto aims your hand cannon. And I think it's even more noticeable for controller users, but it's even noticeable for mouse and keyboard users. You need to just drag and tag a shot. Opening shot can take over and auto aim that weapon for you, or at least to some degree, right? But opening shot only lasts for the first initial shot, which is why I thought this combination was pretty nice with rapid hit. Rapid hit kind of peaks up on the tail end, doesn't necessarily boost accuracy, but the stability there, which is an important stat to have on our hand cannons now, levels out the weapon after landing that first shot, giving us a pretty consistent 3-tap, which is ideally what you're trying to go for here, guys. Waking Vigil, now that it's a 140 round per minute hand cannon, it's hitting 70 damage per crit and 47 damage per body, which is giving us a 0.87 time to kill value. Of course, that does require 3 crits, at least against guardians with mid resilience or higher. Now, the second roll was essentially almost the exact same thing, but we traded out a few things. Number 1, this roll actually came with high caliber rounds, because I actually wanted to see if the flinch was noticeable. Was it helping me in gunfights? Now, we had rapid hit on this roll paired with kill clip. Now, Waking Vigil previously could not roll with kill clip, and now that it's been moved to a 140 round per minute hand cannon, yes, 2 taps are on the table. Matter of fact, the damage goes from 70 per crit to 93 damage per crit. And just as a point of reference, Ace of Spades does 90 damage per crit with Memento Mori. Now, 93 damage per crit is only 186 damage in 2 crits, meaning realistically, you're only going to be able to 2 crit guardians at the bottom of the resilience feed. I mean, 1 resilience. Yeah, there has been some debate and some talk though that 140 round per minute hand cannons could potentially get a buff, a damage buff. And if that is the case, if there's just something there to edge that crit damage just a little higher, say 72 per crit, then voila, Waking Vigil with kill clip, and this particular role is set up to dominate. But I do need to bring up some major downsides to Waking Vigil, especially this role. Despite the damage being really good here, when range testing Waking Vigils, most Waking Vigils don't go north of 30 meters. Matter of fact, a lot of them sit around that 28.5 to 30 meter range, which is pretty poor in comparison to things like Ace of Spades, which sits around 34.5 meters. Palindromes that have max range with rangefinder sits around 36.5 meters. And then of course, 120 round per minute hand cannons having extensively more range. I felt like even though this role was relatively consistent with rapid hit really reining things in, the range on this weapon was what was punishing me the most. Yes, I got a damage buff. Kill clip's nice. And even if I didn't land the 2 crit, that's all right. The 1 crit 2 body combo can work here unless I'm dealing with massive damage fall off, which actually takes us to the role that I landed. This role has been the best performing role out of all of these. It came with steady hand, which is actually what we sided with, as this boosted our stability and handling. I did have hit mark, and I did kind of like trade back and forth between the two, and that extra +5 range did tack on slightly more range. When I say slightly, approximately half a meter. My magazine perk here though is armor piercing rounds. I would of course preferred high caliber rounds or even ricochet rounds here. And then my first trait, rangefinder. Aiming the weapon increases its effective range and zoom magnification. I really like this trait on Pally for that bump there in range, and that's essentially how Pally is able to reach up to 36.5 meters by having a high range stat and of course the combination of rangefinder. But where Waking Vigil starts to separate itself from Palindrome is the fact that we're taking rangefinder and combining it with kill clip. Now for most weapons, or at least hand cannons, you need some sort of perk there boosting your reload speed, right? Something there to help you, whether it's rapid hit, outlaw, etc. But for Waking Vigil, which was originally a 150 round per minute hand cannon, it still retained its default reload speed. And on average, 150 round per minute hand cannons have better reload speeds than that of 140s. Combine this with a hand cannon loader perk, voila. No, it's not outlaw fast or feeding frenzy rapid hit fast, but it's fast enough and plenty quick enough for me to get the reload off after getting a kill and proccing kill clip. Now, with most weapons that have rangefinder on them, I normally say that the weapons do feel a tad bit inaccurate at range, despite the bump there in range. And as stated by other content creators, that's due to the accuracy cone becoming thinner, meaning if you do rock something like rangefinder on your hand cannon, you may have to take a little more time in order to land shots. You need to be more precise. I don't know what it is about Waking Vigil, but I did not notice any of those inaccuracies. I've noticed it before, and I definitely noticed it on Pally, and I stated that Palindrome required us to essentially have the Gonro to combat the inaccuracies that rangefinder presents to us. Waking Vigil did not have that problem. Matter of fact, I would argue and say Waking Vigil got more accurate with rangefinder. It's a very bizarre thing, and it felt so damn good in comparison to all the other roles, which should have felt better, that I'm starting to wonder if maybe Bungie just forgot that rangefinder was supposed to thin the cone up here on Waking Vigil, or maybe the game still thinks this hand cannon's a 150. I don't know. All I can tell you was that rangefinder on Waking Vigil felt amazing. And even though this role wasn't the best in the range department, sitting at roughly 51 to 55 range, nothing crazy. This was enough to actually push our range up to 32.5 meters. And again, if you do slot on something like Crossfire, Hit Mark, Sure Shot, along with a range masterwork here, that will actually push this weapon up to around 33 meters. So 33 meters here, which is essentially 1.5 meters less than Ace of Spades, and it can hit harder with things like kill clip. But more so than that was how good this role actually felt. Rangefinder was what turned me on Waking Vigil. Up until this point, I was ready to raise some hell about Waking Vigil. This is one of my favorite hand cannons. I was upset at the fact that the weapon just did not feel nearly as good as it did when it was previously a 150. But after playing with this role, Waking Vigil has solidified itself as one of my favorite 140s in the current sandbox. The rangefinder really does make a difference. And the fact that we can combine things like rangefinder and kill clip together and not be hindered by slow reload speeds that 140s innately have, this role right here was phenomenal. Now, a fourth and final role, because I did talk about how well our rangefinder kill clip role performed, how consistent it felt, I wanted to actually stretch out a little further and look at a role that should challenge it on the consistency level. And this was actually this hit mark ricochet round role in combination with surplus for that bump there in handling, reload speed, and stability for each fully charged ability and snapshot. Now, this might be a little overkill, which was kind of the goal here. We just wanted to really overcommit to the handling of the weapon. And considering that this is still pretty much a 150, like I know it's an adaptive frame, but stat-wise, it still falls within the 150 range. I just wanted to know, could surplus snapshot actually actually be a role worth entertaining. I didn't mind this role, but again, guys, the moment I sunk my teeth into that rangefinder kill clip role, it's hard going back. And I've heard Cool Guy and I think a few other people saying that Waking Vigil does feel inconsistent, and I can agree with you there. It does, until I actually play with it with rangefinder. It's almost as if rangefinder is working the opposite of the way it's supposed to, right? Where it actually thins the cone and requires your shot to be more precise. But with Waking Vigil, it's like it makes the cone fatter. I felt like my shots were easier to land, even easier than this surplus snapshot roll. So overall, out of all these rolls, which one was the best? Rangefinder kill clip, guys, all day long. Now, are we gonna get a buff to 140 round per minute hand cannons? I have no idea. Maybe if there is a slight bump there in damage, say we go from 70 damage per crit to 72, yes, this roll right here will easily surpass that of my palette. I've got some great roll palettes, but as you know here recently, quick draw is getting a nerf and I'm having to rethink my palette roll. And the main reason why we like quick draw on weapons like Palindrome is because of that handling speed, not necessarily being terrible, but definitely not the best. Waking Vigil doesn't require that. It has that 150 round per minute handling speed. Matter of fact, my roll has 76 handling, meaning even if it could roll with something like quick draw, you don't need it, as this hand cannon is already fluid enough. As far as other rolls to entertain, I do think rangefinder kill clip is just the roll to go for, no matter what. I don't think you need snapshot, although snapshot is something that's really a preferential thing. Opening shot was nice and great for that extension of range on the opening shot of your attack, but again, it dips off after that. Now, would I consider an opening shot rangefinder combo? Actually, yeah, I actually would consider that. It seems a little nutty, but it is a role that does interest me. We're not really trying to go for 2 taps with kill clip, but instead we're just trying to buff that range as much as we possibly can and make this hand cannon as consistent as we possibly can. I will say though, Waking Vigil in its biggest selling point is the fact that it can roll with perks like kill clip instead of just like rampage or high impact reserves like Palindrome rolls with. So I really urge you to just overcommit to that, right? That's what the weapon presents to you. It's presenting you a very good damage dealing perk, and it's not in the same slot as rangefinder, which is unusual. A lot of times rangefinder is in the same slot as our damage dealing perks. So Bungie actually snuck one in behind us here by giving us a rangefinder kill clip roll. And I know many of us wouldn't entertain this kind of roll, but considering that the base default reload stats for Waking Vigil is already pretty solid, throw on a load of perk to help with that reload more. The handling on the weapon is already really good all around the board. Waking Vigil, despite it having poor range, with this roll though, I would choose it even over some of my godliest palindromes to go inside of Crucible with. Play with it, guys. Try a couple of things out, and don't give up on Waking Vigil until you land the God roll. And again, Shadow Throne is dropping these. You've got 5 chances to get Waking Vigil and Retoad Tails and other weapons and armor, but do Shadow Throne every week. And if you happen to come across a rangefinder kill clip roll, do not throw it away, guys. I promise you, you'll be impressed. Well, fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.